Good afternoon. Well, good morning. Good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the 2018 State of the Community. I'm glad that we call this State of the Community instead of just State of the City like they do in a lot of cities across Minnesota, because there really are very few cities that are as closely knit and as closely dependent on one another in so many ways than Edina and the Edina School District. It's so important that we operate together, that we operate cooperatively, and the results and the outcome of that over the long term, and I think of the future, are really important to all of us in this room today. So we appreciate being able to do this together. Before I introduce our school superintendent, I want to introduce a couple of elected officials from the City Council that are here. Mike Fisher is a member of our council, Mary Brindle, and Bob Stewart. Welcome. Congratulations. The other member of our City Council who couldn't be here today, Kevin Staunton, is in Japan. So he's thinking about all of us right now, I'm sure. So it's my privilege to be able to introduce John Schultz. John joined the Edina Public Schools as superintendent last July. Last July, right? He spent the majority of his more than 30-year career in education in the nearby Hopkins Public Schools, first as a 9th grade science teacher, then as a principal intern, as a K-12 district science coordinator, district director of teaching and learning, and for the past 11 years as its superintendent. And that's where I got to know John when I was the city manager in Eden Prairie and also in Edina. John was really very good. He's one of those rare superintendents that really was really good at outreaching to city managers throughout the district. And Hopkins the Hopkins district has a number of cities in it. Also during that time, John intermittently worked for other districts, including as a science teacher at Breck and Epsilon, and a Hennepin County homeschool, as well as the assistant principal at Eden Prairie High School. So, with no further ado, I will introduce John Schultz.
Thank you very much. I want to introduce just a few people from the school district. We have some board members, Erica Allenberg, and Sarah Patzloff, Ellen Jones, and then got some wonderful staff here, Susan Brott, communications director, Sarah Sandel, administrative assistant to me, and Val Burke, community ed. So thank you for being here. So I'm going to start out with a story that was it really happened. It happened yesterday. I was talking to a young woman who is a 10th grader at the high school. And she'd sent me an email, and she said, Dr. Schultz, I'd like to talk to you about safety. I had talked to her about a project that she was doing in her class a month ago, so then she called me and she said, I want to talk to you about safety. So I called her yesterday, and I asked her how her year was going. It was fine, and she said, the things that happened in Florida caused me some concern, and I just wanted to know what your thoughts were about safety in the schools. And I asked her the question, I said, so what keeps you safe? What are the things that make you feel safe? And the first thing out of her mouth was, well, my community. And that's a fairly in-depth response from a young woman. And I just wanted to start out by talking, kind of leaving that story as the kind of the foundation of my presentation, that it's really about community. And so today I'm going to talk about the state of the schools, the nuts and bolts, and then the neat things that are happening to the students that come to Edina. I'll touch upon some of the safety, because I know that's on the minds of many of you, and I'm sure our thoughts and prayers for Florida are there. So I'm going to just start out by sharing, we are public schools, not just people who are here, but and our students, the neat thing about our students, so when I look at a mountain scenery, you kind of look at the mountain scenery and you kind of think, wow, that is really a neat thing to look at, or waterfalls. I'm a science teacher, so I like the geology behind it. But one of the things I also love to do, even more than that, is to look at the faces of kids. And that is our future. And then I like to imagine what it's like, what it's going to be like for them. And that's really important to do in schools. And if you look at those 4 faces and those smiles, our job is to make sure that those faces and smiles are there in the future. our enrollment, we receive students from open enrollment, about 15%. Our student body is 9% qualify for free and reduced lunch. 10% receive special education, and 45% receive English language services. That's students that are coming to our country with English as not their first language. Our staff is amazing. So I've been here about 8-9 months, and it's just amazing to confirm what I've always known about Edina. When I was in Hopkins, there was a lot of partnership, even when I was a teacher, with Edina. And when I worked at the University of Minnesota, training teachers, their interest in coming to Edina, usually Edina was the first school district on their list to apply. So you're getting the best teachers in the state, and it shows with the work they do and what they get kids to do in their achievement. Our teachers are very highly trained, and the other thing that really impresses me about Edina's teachers is they have a very focused professional development. They really learn what their kids need, and then they get the training to make sure that they can deliver to their students. With the community, our community results, we do a survey every year, and our community not only gives us feedback about our schools, but the community is there to support us, to support the work that we do. This is where I'd like to talk a little bit about safety, because it's the community that keeps schools safe. It's the community of the teachers, the administrators, the students within a building that keeps students and everybody in the school safe. But in Edina, that community broadens, and we have in the last worked real closely in the last couple months, because if you remember, we've done a lot of construction. We've worked with our fire and police partners to walk through our buildings to identify what are those areas that we need to think about in the event of a crisis. How do we are training our administrators and our administrative teams and what we call our building emergency response teams. We're training them in what's called integrated command. So police know what that means, that when they come to a scene, they come to a crisis, they set up their command. We're going to do the exact same thing, and we're going to integrate with what they do. And that is in process right now. And I will tell you that coming from Hopkins and Edina has kept safety and security top on the list. Our schools, will, by the beginning of the fall, will have all secured entrances with one door to enter. So Edina Public Schools is on top of the safety and security of our kids and our buildings. And it's a big thank to the police department. So I really, if you can take a second to thank them for all they do. And don't want to forget the fire department. I want to thank all the citizens and voters for the passing of our operating levy. That's really quite a vote for the confidence of our schools with a referendum. We remain fiscally strong. We have most of our money comes from state taxes. You can see the property taxes. That's what the referendum was about. We get some from federal taxes. We get some from other sources, fees, etc. And where do we expend those dollars? In salaries, support services to students, supplies, and equipment. You can see most of our business is all in salaries and benefits. You can see how it's broken down. 77% of our in 2007 was given to pupil support. That has increased in 2017 to 83% going directly into the classroom. Our construction budget is on time. It's the bids are. We've had all the projects bidded out. So we are working in the schools of Creek Valley, Highlands, Valley View, and Southview will be under construction again this summer. Actually starting in April, as soon as the snow melts, getting to work on finishing the construction related to this bond. I want to, if you get a chance, on March 10th and March 17th, and there's some, are they all on the tables? There's open houses to all of the buildings that we have worked on in the last year. The high school, the transportation center, I'm going to forget some, but those buildings that were done, the open houses, it's all in the pamphlet. And March 10th and March 17th. And what's really amazing is that if you look at those set of chairs, when I was in school in the late 20th century, that did not exist. But you know, you watch kids and you walk through schools and you hear kids collaborating and working together in that space. So that's called our collaborative flex space, where kids can talk and talk about projects and develop projects and learn together. We continue to work with strategic direction, personalized learning, learning what the student needs, and then developing the instruction around that, giving students more choice, teaching them how they learn, and then giving them the resource to be successful. District partnerships, there are district partnerships. I am just amazed by the number of district partnerships I've had the opportunity to work with. One example is the Fund-A-Meal. So you have Heather, Amy, and Carolyn who have led a Fund-A-Meal, so to bring money in for those students that can't pay for their lunches. That is another example of how community surrounds their students with support and love. Continue to define excellence. This is a chart that shows the test scores for student proficiency in MCA testing. And this is a kind of a general composite: math, reading, and science. The line that's horizontal is the state average. And in schools, we look at two things on that chart. One is the level at which the bars go, because we want them as high as we can get them. And we also look at those that are below and look at the gaps. And we then design our services, our instruction, and our curriculum, and ensure that we're testing to make sure that students are growing. And this is an example of that, where we measure how our kids grow, and you can see that the national average for this test is 50%, and you can see the growth of Edina students. And that is a very important chart. But there are still students that are not growing in our system. I'm going to be upfront about that, but we're working really hard to figure that out, and a lot of systems in place to understand how to impact them. We continue to define excellence. This is the I may not be able to read this, but this is this is the AP Advanced Placement Program. We had 179 AP scholars that scored an average score of over 3, and I think the 107 AP scholars with honor average scores of 3.5. Students earn honors as advanced placement scholars. That's 542. AP scholars with distinction with average scores of 4+, and then 76 national AP scholars coming out of Edina. So you can see the work of our students is quite amazing. And this is just a chart that we put together of all the accolades and the recognition that Edina Public Schools get. And I hope this community is very proud of the students and the teachers, because that is a signal that is that shows that we are working really hard. And we also, another neat thing about Edina is that I've had the opportunity to work with other school districts across the nation that are like Edina. And it's a little competitive, which I think is really healthy. But at the same time, you learn a lot from one another from other parts of the country. So I'm really comforted by a school board that allows us to look at and compare ourselves to other school districts. So anybody know, since I'm a science teacher, anybody know what that cloud is on the rug, Scott? Carbon dioxide. So early learners, the greatest thing to do is just put something out there that looks unusual, and then having them express what they think it is. We are continually trying to find innovative ways to teach students. This is a student that's learning how to code, putting commands into a computer to make something do something, which I think is just amazing. Relevant learning, students learn when they can see it in their own life, and that's one commitment I've always had as a teacher, and Edina has the same. Applicable learning, you can see here that we've adapted for students for special needs so that they can understand the laws of science and the catapult you can see there. Engaged learning. It's very comforting in these days to know that our students can build community. And this is an example of the students at the high school last year that created a creed that focused on upholding the equity, empathy, and respect for all individuals in their building. This is a picture of Jim leading a walkout at Southview Middle School. Just kidding, he didn't do that. It's just a joke. It kind of looks like it, though. Couldn't that be a headline that? But this was part of the announcing the creed last year, and this is a unity walk that you can see where the community came together to build that community. And it's really great to have the presence of city officials in our schools. It really strengthens what we do every day. So that's Edina Public Schools. So thank you very much for this luncheon and for me to talk.
Not yet. John just asked me if we were going to have Q&A, and we will. We'll do that after the mayor's address. So it's before I introduce the mayor, I wanted just to point out that I've got some staff people here from the city, and there are a lot of them. So if you wouldn't mind just like giving a friendly wave right now, so we can identify who you are. Yeah. Thanks for coming today. Well, our next speaker today is the Honorable Jim Hovland. Jim is an attorney in his spare time, I think, with the law firm of Hovland and Rasmus. Jim joined the Edina City Council in 1997, and he served in that role until he was elected our mayor in 2005. And today he is Edina's longest serving mayor in its history, so over 125 years he's the longest serving mayor. He hasn't served for 125 years, although it feels like it some days, I think. But he's been here a long time. Through his legal work, one of the specialties that the mayor has had in both his legal work and in his work is our mayor has been in the area of transportation. So he's served in a number of different transportation committees at a state level, also at a regional level, and now most recently he was appointed to be the vice chair of the Standing Committee of Transportation and Communications for the United States Conference of Mayors. So that's a big deal in the mayor business, and that's a new appointment for Jim. The mayor has served on the Edina Community Foundation's Board of Directors for more than 2 decades, and he's been an active member of the Rotary Club of Edina Morningside for a long time too. It's my pleasure to introduce the Honorable Jim Hovland. Jim.
Put that up in there.
Oh yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. I don't like that birthday stuff, but I did like the picture with the kids. I like that a lot. I'd like to get a copy of that. So, first of all, I want to give another welcome to John Schultz. So John came here. I think the school board members, Sarah, you could tell me, about 2/3 of the project was finished, touching every school in the district. Over $100 million committed by the residents of our community to refurbish our schools and make them state-of-the-art. So he comes to a new job. He comes a third of the way, or 2/3 of the way through a big construction project. He's following on the heels of Ken Dregseth and Rick Dressen, 2 outstanding superintendents. And he follows also on the heels of us trying to get Northwest Edina into the Edina School District when he was a superintendent in Hopkins. And that was in the Hopkins School District. And so we couldn't quite pull that off at the legislature, so we just hired him, I think, is part of the strategy. We'll see what happens there, but we did make some great progress with being able to open and enroll our kids, I'll call it in a preferred sort of way. Somebody who helped on that a little bit is sitting in the back and didn't get recognized yet as an elected official is Dario Anselmo, our state representative. So Dario, you want to stand up? And there's 2 women here who would like his job. If you want to stand up, Heather Adelson, Carolyn Jackson. So this is a sense of community that we have here. We all We all know each other. And this is a good thing. It's not tribal politics. We'll talk about that just briefly. So,
Just a little taller.
okay, all right, thank you. So John, welcome. And then we had some things with the Center for the American Experiment talking about old things, and we've tried to deal with that. We are dealing with it. Our teacher corps is one of the finest in the country. I want to make sure that their morale is good, and I know you do too. And so you've had a tough job here, and we welcome you, and you've been calm about everything, so thanks. I also want to just, even though she's not here, Sammy Reber, the coach of the girls hockey team. Those post-game interviews were just extraordinary. I thought those young women represented themselves, their team, and our city so well. They were so articulate and so kind about their opponent. It was just class, first rate. It was astounding, and I'm really proud to be a mayor of a town with young people like that coming up that are just so wonderful. So on to the state of the community. I was at the U.S. Conference of Mayors meeting in late January, and a couple of writers were there from the Brookings Institute. Bruce Katz, that I've known for several years, and a guy named Jeremy Nowak, who was on the Philadelphia Fed. They've written a book called The New Localism. And then there, these two Brookings scholars are writing about what's happening in cities, why cities are the place where things are going on. And this was like it was some big epiphany to these scholars. That they just figured out what cities do. And we all know that it was like, you know, that cities solving problems was some type of blessed anomaly in the structure of government. And we all know that that's not true, that this shouldn't have been an epiphany for them, that problem solving has always worked best at the local level. Solutions fashioned locally, for me, over these years I've had this experience, tend to be horizontal in nature. And what I mean by that is that everybody in this room, and we all, I think, kind of know each other well, or some degree of knowledge about each other. You get a combination of the city staff, the city council, the residents, the school board, the school district, and businesses all working together. That is representative democracy and participatory democracy at its best. And that is why, to me, Edina works as well as it does, because we're all engaged in this process of making Edina a great place and making democracy work. So in Edina, we try to govern with a long view. We always have. We've got a Vision Edina plan. We had an Edina 2020 plan before that. And all of that work is guided by pragmatism, not by any party fervor, but by pragmatism. We look for practical solutions to economic growth, land use, housing, environmental sustainability. And I had a guy in our town, this was when we were talking about what to talk about in the city or the state of the community, Bob Gubrud, many of you know Bob, he said, how do you guys go about making the decisions you make, and how do we go about deciding what we all want to do as a town and where we want to head? So I thought we could talk about it in that context today. And that is how our city goes about its work of looking out for the people that we represent and trying to ever improve the quality of life in our community. So let's first talk a little bit about the quality of life survey that we had here, we did last year. So nearly everybody thinks highly of Edina. You can see that we're up a notch. Last I remembered, we were the second happiest state or city in the state. I don't remember who was the happiest, but Jennifer may remember. We don't want to know. I hope it's not St. Louis Park. I mean, if it was Duluth or Ely or, you know, Moorhead, that'd be okay. But I just didn't want it to be St. Louis Park. And I tell Jake Spano that too. And I want to tell you something about this quality of life. Just sort of a recent view of how people appreciate the quality of life in Edina. Last Saturday night, my wife and I went to the Chinese New Year celebration for the Chinese American community, all the people that live in Edina. And they've got their own center over off West 78th Street, over by Scripps. And there were probably 320 people there. Over, I think, close to 200 families, and then with all the kids and everything, it was just an incredible experience. There were a group of about 6 or 8 adult Chinese women that got up, and to a Chinese melody, they sang a song about Edina, my beautiful Edina, my beautiful home of Edina. They are so happy to be here, and we are so fortunate that we have this constantly increasing diversity in our town, where we get better and better and better all the time, the more diverse we become. So, let's see. The question then is, so you get these high scores like this, how did we get there, and how do we go about doing the work that we do? So it's all based on this performance management system. You can see the elements up there. Scott Neal and his team started out doing it first. Our city council, all of our great city council members have adopted this system in looking at all the things that we do. And so what I want to talk about today is, and I want to focus on 3 priorities that employ the principles of the performance management system. Now, you may think that sounds kind of boring, but it's not. So the first topic we're going to talk about is maintaining our extraordinary community assets and premier level of public services. Now, I shouldn't have said it's not, because I kind of like public policy. So, I mean, there are probably people in this room that don't really care about public policy. So bear with us. We're also going to talk about planning for connected and sustainable future development and fostering an inclusive and engaged community. So with respect to maintaining our extraordinary physical assets and infrastructure and premier levels of service, our first goal is to maintain our physical assets and infrastructure. We know deferred maintenance can lead to costly unplanned repairs and replacements with decisions based on short-term implementation costs rather than long-term maintenance costs. Properly maintained streets, water mains, sewer systems, stormwater systems provide reliable and efficient operations that lessen the city's carbon footprint and reduce our energy consumption. We're good at this kind of work as a town. We're careful to maintain all that we own together, because we do. We own this all together. And it's reflected, I think, in the nation's highest bond rating. Nobody has a higher bond rating than the city of Edina. With cities our size, there are probably 36 in the country that have a double AAA bond rating. And so we are in some pretty lofty company. This type of work remains a top priority for us. It dominates some of our conversations at work sessions as to how we want to maintain that infrastructure with an eye towards 21st century sustainability, in terms of right-sizing our streets, meeting resident demands for better pedestrian and bike facilities that complement our street network, and working to meet the challenges of managing stormwater in the context of ever-increasing hardcover and a changing climate. We're also, in recent years, we've also been engaged in a great deal of park master planning. It's time to identify now the funding sources for all of this park master planning that we're doing. So you all know that there's improvements planned for Fred Richards, for the Braemar Parks. We're working on the golf course. We're finishing a design phase at Arden Park. That'll be a beautiful improvement there. And when we begin construction along with the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District, by the end of this year, early next year, after we get a plan put in place that everybody can embrace, we'll end up with another fabulous facility in our town. And we also are working with St. Louis Park to finish a master plan for Weber Woods, which we purchased with them a couple of years ago from the city of Minneapolis. So we've got 43 parks in the city of Edina, and this is one of the most important things to our residents, is our wonderful park system. I also want to talk to you about one of the other, there's some of the photos of the parks. You probably saw that article in the paper last Saturday about discussion at our city council about water treatment plant number 5. Sounds pretty benign, but it sits right under the water tower on France Avenue. And our staff worked really hard to come up with some great ideas about how to put a water treatment facility right on France Avenue. We know we have it in the right place. After analyzing carefully where it could go in that part of town, we determined that that was the best place for it to be from a cost standpoint and from an efficiency standpoint. We can really we can really push water effectively from that location. Well, when you're right under the water tower in France Avenue and you've got the beautiful new Restoration Hardware building going up right next door, and you've got building owners, property owners, and developers willing to spend hundreds of millions of dollars in that part of our town in the Southdale District, don't you think we should make sure that that building that's utilitarian in purpose has a nice sort of skin on it, an appropriate sort of skin, so that it blends into the neighborhood and doesn't cause somebody to think about, well, I don't really think I want to do something with my property right now. I don't like the way things are trending on France Avenue. I don't like that utility building on France Avenue. We've already heard something about that from some of our property owners. So we're trying to be careful about that in the design phase, and stay tuned on that. I didn't put a picture of what we'd proposed up there because it was something that was unacceptable to the entire council. Yeah. So maintaining service levels. There's a great photo. I hadn't seen this photo before of our PD with Scott Neal. So we also need to maintain our premier levels of public service. Maintaining service levels contributes to the overall quality of our life, safety, and well-being of our residents. Maintaining the quality of public safety, both police and fire, by right-sizing the workforce is essential to delivering these services. Investing in the people and equipment necessary to plow our streets, keep our water, sewer, and other infrastructure delivering for all of us as residents is critical as well. Last year, the city completed a public safety staffing study to determine what it will take to provide quality police, fire, and emergency medical services in the coming years as the population grows and changes. The final report, which was done by a company called Novak Consulting, included 41 key recommendations to improve operations and service now and in the future. With respect to the police department, our police department has exceeded historic levels of proactive policing. A couple of weeks ago, you probably saw that article in the paper about DWIs. And I did get a call from one of our residents, left me a voicemail, left me his phone number and his name, saying he didn't like that. I didn't like the police sneaking around in those stealth cars, picking up people for drunk driving. So I thought, well, maybe he's had that experience. And you know, what we've done with our PD, which is so effective in all the public safety areas, is, yeah, we do arrest a lot of drunk drivers, but you better not be driving through Edina and have been drinking and fail a test. Because we're going to keep our residents safe. We're going to keep other people safe too, no matter where they're driving. If they're coming through here, you better be careful. So we've had at the PD a 20% increase in calls for service between 2015 and 2016. That's affected some of our proactive policing abilities, and we haven't added any staff. So also on the fire side, 75% of our fire calls are emergency medical services calls, and the city's been understaffed there for a significant fire call, multiple calls at once, or for allowing time for adequate training, according to the Novak report. EMS calls also continue to increase 6.4% between 2015 and 2016. That trend is expected to continue with Edina's aging population and changing demographics. So we're going to do some new safety positions. We're going to add 4 public safety positions this year, 2 new police officers, a 911 dispatcher, and police administrative support position as well. And next year, we're going to at least entertain, from a budget standpoint, whether we want to add 3 more paramedic firefighters and an emergency services captain. And there's our fire department as well. Now there's some data that I think you can see it on some of your placemats, but there's some of the information we have here as well. And remember that just generally, though we're a first-ring suburb, you're living in the safest. If not one of the safest towns in the metro. The only ones that have a lower crime rate than us are places like Orono or Deep Haven. But we have we are the safest large suburb to live in by far. Also remember, with respect to fire, we've talked about this before, this is the safest place in the country to have any cardiac issues. The Center for Disease Control did a study a few years ago that showed that Edina was #1 in cardiac saves in saving people that had cardiac problems. You're 232 times more likely to survive a cardiac event here than the average city in the U.S. Hennepin County is #1, and we're #1 in Hennepin County, therefore making us #1 in the country. And that success continues. So there's a little bit about some of these positions. Now, here's an issue that's coming on to the forefront for us, body-worn cameras. You know, this was a big topic of conversation at the legislature. We're going to study the implementation of body-worn cameras by the police department this year. So body-worn cameras are a relatively new addition to law enforcement, although they've been doing it for several years in Burnsville with some success. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, they hold tremendous promise for improving public safety, increasing transparency and accountability. And I think that's what they would tell you down in Burnsville, is that it's really been a benefit to the police to have these body cameras. One of the big problems, of course, is what do you do with all the data? And what portion of the data is actually private data? So somebody goes out on a domestic issue, you've got your body camera running, you know, what happens to that information? And then how does all that information from all these different officers, if you've got 40 officers on your force, how do you maintain all that data over time? It's extraordinarily expensive. Excuse me. So, the next topic is plan for connected and sustainable future development. This is really an important element for our community. We want to support building practices and policies that need the redevelopment and renewal while accomplishing our sustainability goals around carbon emission reduction, waste and water quality. We want to support redevelopment that incorporates transportation design that makes it easy to walk, bike, and move around Edina. And we want to increase the number of affordable units in our community. So I'm just going to take a quick walk around parts of the community here. Many of you have seen this in place for a few years now. It's 1 Southdale Place on the, right across from the Westin. So I want to just talk about Southdale Mall briefly, and then I'm going to show you the rest of the photos about what's going on around Southdale Mall. So you've heard conversation generally, you've seen articles in the paper about brick and mortar retail and online retailing and how it's affecting brick and mortar retail. The National Shopping Center Association would say that's not true. We got 93% occupancy rates all over the country. And there really isn't a demise in brick and mortar retail. And in fact, some of the online companies are going to brick and mortar. Think about Whole Foods being purchased, I think, by Amazon. One example of it. Nonetheless, around Southdale, where we've had a tremendous amount of redevelopment, Simon, with that 80-acre piece of property of theirs, has been figuring out how to employ that more effectively or use it more effectively. So now on every corner, there's going to be something new in the Southdale District. This is the southeast corner, and that's another view of the same building. It's kind of a distorted view. And then just quickly around the district, and I'll come back to Southdale in a moment. This is the Avenue on France project, which is planned for across France Avenue from the water tower, a 3-block stretch from 69th to 66th. They're in the first phase of, I think, coming back to the city. They need to come for some parking approvals. This was a master plan approved, but every single project that they want to do, they have to come back and get approval from us. So we're eager to see what the first phase is. Does this have a, yeah, there. This first phase here is going to be retail, and this the new bank is down this direction, I believe. This is the Millennium, which hasn't been started yet. I don't think, Scott, have they got their building permit?
Yeah.
They do. So this is over on the Titus building corner. No. Or is this?
That's yours. That's the bus barn.
Oh, that's the bus barn. Okay, I couldn't see it very well. All right, so up at Jerry's. You know, the school district sold that property to Trammell Crow. We approved a 55-plus housing development up there, 6 stories, and they're underway there. They've done some good work underground, and that'll be a wonderful place, I think, for people to live. What we have to do there is solve the transportation infrastructure problems along with all this other development that we're talking about in that area. This is done at the 49th, now Market Street, 49th and France. This is looking west from let's say from Walgreens, and this is what we're going to see in a couple years when everything is done down there, and we're trying to manage that project effectively now. This will provide some housing and more retail, additional parking, 4-story added to this ramp, They're working on that now, and then we'll end up with increased parking capabilities over what we have now, with the middle ramp torn down and replaced with retail and housing, and then there'll be underground parking there as well. This is the from the public works site, or between City Hall and the public works site is, Highway 100. And we've been looking at whether this idea makes any sense, which has been done to other parts of the country, including the Twin Cities, up in Duluth, to put a lid over the top of Highway 100. So imagine Highway 100 underneath there, north-south. This would be about a 400-yard run where we'd have a central sort of park. And then there could be redevelopment in the MnDOT right-of-way. And we're in the continual process now of analyzing the financial feasibility of this, and in the process of determining whether it makes sense for us to be doing it, along with MnDOT, which is a very good partner on this. And our other partner is the Rondo neighborhood in St. Paul. And Rondo, they want to lid over 94 because that separated their community years and years ago. And so they want to be joined together again, so they have that better sense of neighborhood and community. And they don't have the same sort of economic development potential that we have here. So they've been in at least one meeting I've been in, representatives from Rondo, where we've talked about how development here, causing MnDOT to be able to sell or lease land, would create financial opportunity for MnDOT to be able to do the project that Rondo wants over on 94. And that's how we end up as partners. And it's been a wonderful experience. This is something that's, we've been admiring the problem here. This is the old public works site. We've been admiring this problem for almost a decade. We've had a lot of citizen groups that have worked on it, including at one time a group of 52 residents that looked at this piece of property, 3.3 acres, trying to figure out what to do with it. Came to the conclusion that it should be 2/3 public, 1/3 private. There have been folks that have wanted to have a large community center there. We looked at that. We looked at the cost of that, somewhere between 30 and 70 million, and thought that wasn't feasible. We don't see a market failure in fitness in Edina. We've got a new fitness center coming up with Lifetime at Penny's on the old Penny site at Southdale. That's going to generate, that'll create the nicest Lifetime fitness in the country. And we just approved rooftop dining. They want rooftop dining out there around their pool, and to be able to serve alcoholic beverages up there as well. So this project, potential project, at the public works site would involve this 2/3 for public. And what would be here would be an art and culture, I'll call it an art and culture center. Bob Stewart's back here. He wants me to call it a community center, I think. And I think that's okay. It'll have a multitude of uses. This would be a grassy rise up to the cover over the parking, which would be for 420 units. And then this would be a field. And then this wall that could be created here, adjacent to the railroad track, we could use for all kinds of purposes, not just greenery, but it could become a place where you could have outdoor theater at night. Residents could come and sit on the lawn and enjoy a film together. It has all kinds of possibilities. As you walk up Arcadia, this would be affordable housing, artist lofts. And then to make the whole thing work, the developers are saying that we've partnered with, and we went through a process in picking a partner with Frown Shoe companies. They want a 17-story, not a condominium, but an apartment building here to be able to, and at a higher end apartment building, to be able to make the entire project work in their opinion. So we're analyzing all that now. It has some really interesting aspects to it, and stay tuned on that. All right, let's see what else we got here. Lori talked about medical destination, becoming more of a medical destination. Organically, that's happening to us. We had the expansion of the Southdale emergency room, 40,000 square feet, 60,000 square foot addition at Southdale Medical Center. And now this new Twin Cities Orthopedics building, which is going up off 77th. And so we're getting some more growth organically. We just need to figure out how to take advantage of it. And then this is a new hotel. We're back at the Southdale site now. This is the new hotel going up on the northeast corner of the Southdale site, under the Hilton brand Homewood Suites. We had them beef up the architecture, the landscaping, And then we did some traffic system improvements there that they're going to help pay for. And you can see that's under construction at the present time, right across from what will be another new apartment building done by Doran Companies. Where am I here? So now over on the southwest corner of the Southdale site will be this new RH. This is Experience Retail. This is Restoration Hardware's version of modern retailing. And it's going to be it looks like an Italian villa. And you'll be able to go in there and you'll be able to there'll be a restaurant in there, they can entertain in there, you could gather groups there, you could do weddings there, you can also buy furniture there. And so you walk around, pick out your furniture and order it online because they'll have all these rooms decorated, including outside. And then up in the northwest corner, which is the best corner on that property, there's going to be a Shake Shack going in there. Now you say, well, why is Shake Shack on that great corner? Well, it's because Macy's has a view shed right. If you go over by the new hotel, you see that once that hotel's up, you can't see them all. And so Macy's has a view shed right on their lease that they can't have their signage blocked from view from somebody driving south on France Avenue. So Simon was limited to something they could do from a one-story basis, and this is what happened. And then there's the new Lifetime Fitness that'll go in and where the Pennies was. So now we're working on the comprehensive plan, and that's in process as well. Every 10 years we have to do a comprehensive plan for the Met Council, and that'll be due at the end of 2018. And we've got all kinds of folks working on that in the community and staff folks as well. We currently have small area plans that we're working on for 44th and France and 70th and Cahill. And last week the city received the revised pedestrian and bicycle master plan, and these will all be rolled into the comprehensive plan that we submit in 2018 to try to give Met Council a 10-year view of where we think our town is heading. And there'll be several issues involved with that. And then the last topic is the fostering inclusive and engaged community. And this element of the work we're doing is really important as well. And it has involved a broad range of stakeholders in our town. And these are some of the elements involved in that. As you know, we've been working on some race and equity issues. We've got a wonderful team of citizens leading us there. They've been working now for about a year, and I think they're ready to give us a report in May as what they think we should be doing from a city to make sure that we're treating everybody fairly. So these are just some of the diagrams that we have. So that, whew. Wow, yeah. When you're working on it day to day, it doesn't seem so overwhelming. I'm just kind of exhausted. Yeah, it makes me wonder how I can do my other job at all. So just think about this. So here we are in a 16 square mile town of 50,000 people, and we've got so much going on in our community. We're up to $11.5 billion worth of market value. And that is number 4 in the state. We're behind Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Bloomington, and we're barking at Bloomington's heels. And they're twice the size we are, maybe more than twice the size we are. So we're blessed. But I'll tell you, it's all of you that create this blessing. It's the school district especially. You can tout our location all you want, but the school district is the glue that holds our town together and makes it a desirable place to live. And then we get to work on all these other things too. So I've been blessed to be the mayor. It's a job I haven't wanted to quit because it's so much fun. It's so much, there's so much going on in our town. I'm really looking forward to working with the new school board members and the old ones, the older former ones that are still, you know, friends. We are all friends, working on common goals here. So, anybody have any questions? Still got a voice, Mike.
Jim, you alluded to reducing the carbon footprint a little bit in your presentation. I'm wondering any particular examples of things the city is doing on sort of you know, new age sort of things that the city's doing to minimize carbon footprint?
Yeah, thanks. We've hired a sustainability coordinator that worked at Target, and she's doing a wonderful job kind of getting the stage set for us to really make some great progress. We've got an Energy and Environment Commission that is really first-rate, composed of citizens in our town. Some of the low-hanging fruit is, and I'll tell all of you in this room, some of the low-hanging fruit on reducing our carbon footprint is getting out your Excel bill or your CenterPoint bill and checking the box for wind power. Those few extra dollars a month is where we can make the biggest difference in the fastest sort of way. We're also the first city in the state to have a community solar garden. We're putting it on top of the Public Works. And we're looking at other ways to participate in solar, buying that power remote. She's working on converting our fleet over to more energy efficient vehicles that are lower carbon producing vehicles. And Scott, we've got, I don't know, it just seems like there's so many things that we could talk about.
the most.
Sure.
I would say, Mike, probably the most important things where we get the biggest bang for the buck in terms of sustainability, though, are the mundane things of making sure our HVAC equipment is operating at peak efficiency, turning down the temperature in parts of the year, turning it up in parts of the year, and making sure that we don't idle our vehicles unnecessarily. It's those little things that add up, probably at least at this stage of that of the sustainability challenge, really add up to where most of our savings comes from.
I think you'll see more and more emphasis in towns around the country on clean energy and attracting clean energy. And Excel, I saw Michelle here earlier, there she is. They've got a wonderful program that they've put in place with the cooperation with the state legislature. And I really have to give Excel a lot of credit for anticipating the surge towards clean energy over time and trying to be on the forefront of that issue. And so thank you. Thank you for working with our town, and we really appreciate what Excel is doing. Bill.
Yeah, Jim, question about MnDOT and where they pick up and where you leave off as far as landscaping and maintenance of the cities. It seems like Edina's just getting things just perfect to the point where the worst parts of the city are some of the MnDOT responsibility. Do you ever take over their lawn mowing, tree trimming, and everything else on the freeway system, or not? No. And can you? Do you have the right to?
We don't have the right to do it, and I don't know, this is more personal for me, but I think, I don't understand why they mow, frankly. Those grasses, if they would grow to they don't grow past a couple of feet. They hide all the litter. They come through there. I mean, this is a guy who's on highway cleanup duty, you know? So you come out there twice a year, and the MnDOT mowers have chopped up everything that's out there, and so now you're picking up little shards of this and that instead of picking up big pieces of paper. No, we can't. We can talk to them and try to persuade them to come out and do some of the work that they should be doing, but I think I'd like to see the whole metro planted with perennials and have grasses and flowers everywhere, like you see in some of the countryside when you drive through Minnesota. I thought you were going to ask about the lid.
Oh, well, I would like to ask about the lid, but I'm afraid to know the answer.
Because I think one of the businesses I worry about the most is you. I don't want to have your business blocked from view from the highway.
Don't worry about me. Just make
view.
sure it's a certified check.
That's a personal view.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff.
What's happening with Pentagon Park?
Okay, that's a good question. Pentagon Park. Is any of the tanking off folks here? Any of the Hillcrest people? No. Well, let's talk about them then. Don't anybody say anything. It's been a challenge getting that south parcel and that north parcel developed, and they're working hard at it. We're working hard at it, trying to figure out how to stimulate activity at those two locations, which are just terrific locations, you know. And we've got some interest, some broader interest, and he's coming in with some plans for the north parcel, I think. Some of the things they had in mind on the south parcel have kind of fizzled, but maybe they'll be back with some ideas there. But that's another project that hasn't moved at the pace the council would like to see. And there's a lot of reasons for it. And I would say that Scott Tankenoff and his crew have worked hard to try to figure out a solution too. But for some reason, the stars aren't aligning on that yet. Mr. Josh.
That was my question.
Oh, okay. So what else is going on in our town?
Tell us about the new roundabout going in. 69? That's been proposed? By Southdale, between Southdale
Oh,
and Gallery.
yeah, right. That was proposed several years ago by people who lived up in the west, and I think it's a pretty good idea. You do a roundabout on 69th Street, kind of on the north side of the Galleria. And for me, that's a beautiful boulevard through there, and it's just, it's all quack and crabgrass, and it could be just beautifully landscaped, although the engineers said we don't have money in the budget for that. But it could be another addition to the roundabout array that we have. I think that'll really beautify and enhance safety in our community.
Any news on the Hennepin County Library site?
Hennepin County Library site was the question. That 8-acre piece over there on the corner of, what is that, 70th and York. So we've got a meeting coming up with the district or the county administrator in the middle of March. And we'll talk to them a little bit about it. I think the tension there has been between the library folks and the county commission. The library people want a larger library than the county wants to build. They seem like they're getting close to some kind of resolution on that, but we'll be their development partner on that. We've been doing the public engagement process, and there'll be something there. I think what should be there is a library that's iconic. So I'm lobbying for getting first-rate architecture on that library so that it becomes a focal point in our town. Yes?
You named it on the Titus building.
Titus building. Do they have their building permit? Scott, do you know? So we approved a project on the northwest corner of 66th and Xerxes, where the Titus building is up that little hill there.
They have an approved development plan.
Yeah, they have
Got their building permit.
Yeah, they have an approved development plan, but they have not been in to get their building permit. And I don't know if if the number of apartment units that have been built in the Southdale District has discouraged them from going forward. Just not sure about that. I see Jim Nelson out in the audience, who was one of the adjoining property owners, and I don't know if you know anything or not.
I don't know anything, Jim. I know what you just said. They have their approval, but have not taken a permit out.
Yeah, so, and then the Doran project is underway on the old Best Buy site. And we've had a sketch plan review at 7250 France. And we haven't seen anything on 7200 France. And so that'll be another, as we can talk about this a little bit, heightened density. It's something that people are trying to get comfortable with, even on the council trying to figure out where it's appropriate. And the Southdale District seems to be, on a scattered basis, an appropriate location for it. We had one significant project proposed that didn't make it. It was deemed to be too close to single-family neighborhoods. I was the only one that voted for it, so I kind of, anyway. Our council thought it was a good project, just not in the right place. Now we've got one at the Guitar Center that's been preliminarily approved. And that'll be a 17-story apartment building right on the promenade, right across from Think Bank. And that'll be a great project there, high-end apartment building. And people say, well, why are they just building apartment buildings and not condominiums? Because I see realtors in the audience, Edina realtors tell me that there's a pent-up demand for condominiums in Edina. It's either the Weston on the high end or 5000 France, and then there's some lower end ones, but that's it. What are we going to do about getting more condominiums in Edina? And the truth is that you need financing for it, and that seems to be the biggest obstacle. Is that they need sponsors, as they call it. That's their term of art. And if you're a sponsor for a condominium project, you better have extraordinarily deep pockets. So a guy like Luigi Bernardi had the capability to be a sponsor. There's a few other people in town that have that capability. A guy named Jim Stanton, who was building things down on the river, who passed away. Bob Lex. But they haven't been out to look in Edina. But we'll just have to be patient on that. Sarah?
What is going in the redevelopment sign where the old, I think it was a Jiffy Lube, and there's a dry cleaner and a fitness center up at, Vernon, across from Jerry's.
Yeah.
It's a Caribou?
Caribou Einstein Bagel.
Yeah. And then at 70th in France, where the gas station was, the BP was, that's that'll be a building that looks somewhat like the Vitamin Shop building across the way in terms of its architecture and high-level materials. And then I think it's a financial services business and another Italian street food vendor like Piata over at the Onyx on on York. And that'll be a nice addition to that corner, although we are losing gas stations. And there's fewer and fewer places to get your car filled up with gas. Jen.
Jim, I have more of a comment than a question. I just want to really recognize the community, both the schools and the city, for all of the walks with the mayor, the listening sessions, all of the open meeting formats. I think it's so critical in this age of social media, and we see a lot of conversation happening behind the computers, that we offer so many forums for people to come together. So I just really want to recognize you guys for doing a great job and for making those forums available, and please keep doing it because it's so important.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Jen. Yeah, we will. That's our intention, is to try to embrace community comment as much as we can. We've got to make decisions at some point in time on things, but I always think of what Peter Brocius, many of you know him, he lives in our town, he runs the Children's Theater. He told me one time that both theater and democracy are creatures of Greece, ancient Greece. And they both have the same credo. All voices should be heard and all voices matter. Now, based on that credo, you've got to make some decisions about direction you're going to take, and sometimes it's not a direction some folks in our community want to take, but nonetheless, their voices were important to the process. And for me personally, it always helps you make a better decision. And I think my fellow council members would say the same thing. So, yes?
Might I just make a comment for the superintendent? I don't know if he's coming back up for Q&A, but I wanted to congratulate the Edina School on the aftermath of the huge snowstorm and the late buses and everything. It was a wonderful write-up of what you're doing, what you're planning to do. We also have friends in St. Paul, and they got a letter from the school and said so.
Thank you. Thank you. Those are always difficult decisions, and want to thank Susan Brott for the communications behind that, and always want to review those decisions because they're not made that frequently, so it's good to have those. So thank you very much.
We've got some really great things going on in our school district. You can just tell from the data that John presented that our kids are just wonderful, wonderful kids, and our teaching corps is first rate. That Center for the American Experiment article created quite a dust-up. There's some folks in our community that are still feeling kind of bruised by it. And I want to tell them that let's talk. Let's get together. Let's hash this out. New school board members and existing school board members alike feel the same way, I'm sure of it. Let's get this hammered out. Let's go on together. Let's not let this fester. Let's meet it head on and deal with it. And don't be thinking about leaving town with your kids or anything else, because we want you here in Edina. We're a big family here, and we may not always agree on everything, but we should be going forward together. Karen.
I'm just curious of the development. I don't see anything around affordable housing.
Oh, great question. Yeah, I get a little nervous about all the time I was taking, so I skipped by a piece there, and I think there are other people in the room that would like to know about that as well. Of course, we had the project we did with the prompting of our broader community, especially our faith community at 66 West, those 39 studio units for young people trying to get on their feet and get going. But now we've got to make some decisions as a community and a council about how we're going to deploy this money that we're getting for affordable housing. In our Affordable Housing Fund, it's actually sitting kind of in the Housing and Redevelopment Authority. side of things. But we got $2 million from Opus when they built that apartment building out at 169 on Bren Road, because they didn't want to buy their way in, as Kevin Staunton would say, into the affordable housing thing. So we, under our policy, we let them contribute money so that we could build this fund. Around Southdale, when they did the remodeling out there, we created a TIF district that is solely dedicated to affordable housing. We've got somewhere between a total, what do we got, $8 million in our affordable housing account. We got almost as much as the city of Minneapolis has in theirs, and theirs is all federal money, community development block grant money. So we've got to figure out how we're going to deploy this money in the most effective and efficient way that we can. And that's the task of the council, the task of the Edina Housing Foundation, the task of all of us in this community, including Hope's group, which is?
Edina Neighbors for Affordable Housing. This is a citizen-driven group. We're working with the city and the Housing Foundation. If you're interested, see me.
Yeah, they're providing great input for everybody that's interested in this issue. So I always think, I look right at Mike Fisher when he was on the Planning Commission years ago. I'm going to trot this out on you again, Mike. I'm sorry. So they were working on some affordable housing component of the last comp plan, and there were some frustrated neighbors up there that didn't want affordable housing. They didn't want affordable housing in their neighborhood. They didn't want to risk it. And finally, Mike got exasperated. And this was in a neighborhood where, over in the commercial industrial area off 70th and Cahill. And it was an important conversation to have, I'll put it that way. And Mike finally said to them, what are you folks worried about? Roving bands of dental hygienists? That's probably a good note to end on. This housing is important to all of us. We see all over the country these challenges of affordable housing. We get a chance to do something about it here, even though we think ours is really expensive. But we're not California. We're not New York. We get a chance to do something about this and create an opportunity for people to live here that would have a hard time doing it right now. Dental hygienists, police and firefighters, teachers. We're making some progress with the land trust, but we're not making the kind of progress we need to make. So thanks for asking that question. Karen? Yes?
So what's the ongoing conversation between the schools and regarding all this housing, class sizes, population, et cetera?
Staff to staff, if you could maybe comment on it.
On a staff basis, we share development proposals quite a bit, actually, with school staff. We take a look. There's some expectations from the planning world about how many kids per unit are in certain kinds of housing, and we share that data with them. On most of the housing that we see coming up, particularly in the Southdale area, are multifamily rental units or even high-end rental units that really haven't proven to have many kids come with them, so they don't really have much of an impact on school populations. But we do share that information back and forth.
And I've met with several developers throughout since I've been here, probably 4 or 5, just to inform us of how the percentage of kids they expect in that development. And then within the school district, we have policy, resident enrollment, of course, is state law that they have the priority to be in the building, or to be in the attendance area or the school in their attendance area. So then we manage that through the open enrollment that comes in and out to maintain those class sizes.
One of the things I hear from parents is the concept of the house. One of the things I hear as a board member from parents is the concern of the housing turnover, so tear downs, our older citizens possibly moving out, and families and children coming in, and so trying to make sure that we have that balance so that we don't have one elementary building suddenly getting a surge and we're not prepared for it. Could you maybe address that? Thank you.
Sure. We've had since 2008, and Jennifer, I think, was it part of the rolling, the pre-show? It was. So in the last 10 years, from 2008 to 2017, we've had 753 residential redevelopments in Edina. And it's fair to say that the typical situation is old people moving out, young family moving in. That's almost always the case. And young family moving in because it's in the Edina School District almost every single time. So that does have an impact, but when you think about that impact spread over that many years, it's not as big an impact as you might think. In 2017, there were 88 residential redevelopments. Not all of those had kids in them, but I'd say most of them did, and if they didn't, there are kids coming in the future. So it does have an impact, but they are spread around the city, not uniformly. They're spread mostly on the east side, but we're now starting to see that phenomenon happen on the other side too. But I don't think we've seen them happen in such a way that it creates a wave, kind of a material impact on school populations in a particular school.
Oh, very good.
So when you look at high density housing, and do most of the residents, are you predicting most of those residents move from Edina, or are you seeing that they move from multiple areas? Because I think, again, one of the concerns is with displacement of, if you can say that a high density housing is going to be elderly residents do not have children in it, but it is displacing a large number of elderly residents that live in housing. So the theory that you just said, then everything will be a large influx of young families coming to our school district. Does that make sense?
I think what I said is I think you are going to have more young families coming into the school district, but the question is it going to be so many that it makes a material impact on a particular school population in a building? And I don't think that it will. I think it will increase school populations, but not in just a wave that's going to hit the district. As in a similar way, if you'd have changed borders and you have a bunch of new people coming into the school district like that, it happens on a slow basis.
So we had time for one more question. Anybody else?
What is Edina's total population?
Yeah, I think it's just slightly over 50,000. We now qualify for some of those best communities in the world to live in awards, like Money Magazine. And you had to be over 50,000 people and at least 10% diverse, I think. And we meet both those qualifying criteria now. So, yes?
Just very quickly, is there any thought or anything being done to bring the Edina people that live on the west side of Xerxes and York, all of those condo buildings and apartment buildings, into the Edina School District? I'm the president of the HOA at the Colony. We have 308 people, and we're getting more and more children all the time. And the Edina and the Richfield buses cross each other on 66. We're just wondering if there's anything being thought about bringing those into the Edina district.
The superintendent is saying no.
Just good invitation. Yeah.
I wanted to thank my colleagues that are here too, Bob Stewart, Mary Brindle, Mike Fisher. We have just a terrific council and very thoughtful people, very smart, very capable. And as would be appropriate, we don't always head in the same direction on decision making, but it's a wonderful group of people to work with, and your town is extraordinarily well served by having all of them on our council. And so keep them there. Thank you.